Can you like a lot of songs on an album, but not really like the entire album? I mean, I know the answer is yes, because I say that, I like a lot of songs off of an album, but I may not like the whole album. But this just feels different. Like, I like a lot of songs off of this album, but I don't think I'd ever choose to listen to this album all the way through. Let's get into it. Welcome, all fellow wannabes. Welcome to the channel. I am Gabriel Fast. I do claim to be the Wannabe critic. I think this is technically the first post on like the Wannabe Music Reviews channel. That's just strictly music. Of course, this channel used to be for podcasts, but we've kind of moved the podcasts over to the main channel where we talk about games and whatever else we want over there. But I figured, which is in the description below, by the way. But I figured, it's time to have just a separate channel for music and a separate channel for the rest of the scraps. So here we are. Also, stay tuned because we're going to have podcast versions of all of these episodes available as soon as possible. So stay tuned for that if you're an audio listener. Today we are reviewing our next Foo Fighters record, Foo in Review, number 4, so to speak. Here we are, reviewing Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace. Now, I have to say, this is actually one of the first Foo Fighter records that I ever listened to before I even really loved the band. But you know what? I'm feeling kind of tired before I get into it. I just wanted to kind of, just get a little... Today's video is, in fact, sponsored in part by Ray's Energy. I couldn't do it without them, honestly. Some of the best tasting energy drinks you'll ever have. Use my code, _wannabecritic, to get 15% off your entire order. It's delicious. As I was saying... Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace was one of the first records that I ever listened to of the Foo Fighters, and really it was just a song or two off of the album that I really, kind of acquainted myself with. The Pretender is one of the biggest songs of 2007, and it was definitely dawning the return of the Foos. If you've listened to my thoughts before, the last record that they put out I thought was somewhat a little bit lackluster. And we actually have another album that we need to review, in addition to this one, which is called In Your Honor, but I'm still kind of mulling that one over as well. But today we're talking about Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace. Now, it's frustrating because I feel like this album starts off so strong. You have The Pretender, which is one of the biggest songs, as I said before. Then you have, a handful of other songs that kind of fit well into the album. But as I mentioned in the outset, I feel like this album just doesn't really click as well for me. It doesn't flow as well as I would like it to. And frankly, there's just some songs that feel like they're just, just there to be there, if that makes sense. I was thinking about the best way to sum up this album, and honestly, it just feels like a collection of glorified... Whoops, did you see that? My camera just moved. To me, it just kind of feels like a collection of glorified B-sides, that didn't quite make the cut, so then they just kind of got slammed into this album. Obviously, that's probably not true, but there's just something that feels off with the band, whether it be, I don't know, trying to find their way back into fame, or realizing that, the last couple albums they had put out just maybe hadn't quite hit that exact same, color and the shape level. I don't know. There's just something off about this album. I didn't do any digging to find any quotes from Dave Grohl or any of the other bandmates. I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan, but I don't know. I don't want to say that this album is lazy. There are songs that I like on this album. I don't know what else to say, but I'm not going to go buy this on vinyl and put it on there for those one or two songs. That's really no insult to the band. I think they're a great band, obviously. I love them. They're my favorite band of all time. But they're just something that feels lost. There's a little bit of soul lost on this album. So let's kind of go track by track, and we'll kind of do like a little mini review of each track. So we have The Pretender. Great start to an album. You couldn't ask for a much better kickoff to a record. Then we have Let It Die, which, kind of has a little bit of, has remorse laced within it, and also a little bit of resentment. I think around this time period, Dave Grohl had gone through a divorce, something like that, so it would make sense that he would, write a song about said divorce, if that's what the song in fact is about. It's just okay, in my opinion. It has some diversity. That's another thing about this album is, there's a lot of diversity on this album, which is a pro and a con, in my opinion. But, we have kind of like this real melodic beginning and kind of like delicate beginning, and then the song kind of finishes out strong with Dave being like, "Why'd you have to go and let this die?" You know what I mean? It's just kind of interesting. I can't do a Dave Grohl scream very good, but it's a little bit like that, you know what I mean? Then we have, kind of it's one of those like earworms that kind of gets stuck in my head with Erase, Replace. It gets stuck in your head. The musicianship is kind of good. It kind of has a melancholy type vibe to it, but I'm not really getting necessarily what the message is trying to say. Towards the end of the song, there's a lot of ohs and ahs kind of taking up place where there could be lyrics. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Foo Fighters are at this point in time, they are alternative, but let's be real, alternative is just a fancy way of saying you're, pop rock, which isn't an insult. I think there's a lot of pop rock that's great, but, it just didn't really, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily speak to me the same way that something like, even earlier in the record. I mean, I just feel like a lot of these, they're just like fluctuations. Like, it feels like several EPs put into one record in terms of theme and quality. Then we have number 4, which is Long Road to Ruin, which is my favorite song off of the record. I remember Dave, the Foo Fighters putting out another legendary, music video, kind of like mimicking General Hospital, stuff like that. And I remember liking that as a kid. And I remember this is actually one of the first songs that I remember learning how to play drums to. The Long Road to Ruin chorus, it just feels very triumphant. And it's a really solid song overall. I think it does a really good job of conveying the emotions that it's supposed to. But at the end of the day, like I said before, it's a pop rock song. It's alternative. It's doing a good job of trying to execute what it's supposed to. Then we have a more, kind of another interesting song, kind of in the same vein as Let It Die, kind of a, more delicate, like softer piece at the beginning, and then it really builds up towards the end with Come Alive. It very much feels like a second coming, or almost like a reprise of what Let It Die was. And that's kind of a lot of the themes found within this record. I think that, could kind of go into the general title, Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. I don't know, maybe there's room for diversity there. It would make sense. But Come Alive is just, ultimately kind of falls not flat, but it just kind of gets a little meh for me. And at this point in the record, I got amped up from Long Road to Ruin. And now we really kind of take a downward slope with the rest of this album, because we had Come Alive, then we have Stranger Things Have Happened, which is an all acoustic piece, no drums, no full band, but it's a really good song, don't get me wrong. Then we have Cheer Up Boys, Your Makeup Is Running, which is kind of another weird song. Summer's End kind of feels reminiscent of like earlier Foo Fighter days, in my opinion. The self-titled record, supposed to, kind of be, this is your like arena jumping, dancing, kind of rock song. Gets the people going. By this point in time, we need kind of another little uplifting song to get us through the rest of it. Then we have Ballad of Beaconsfield Miners, which, there's kind of interesting story behind this. I think there's some miners that had got lost in Australia, and the Foo Fighters heard about it and just decided to kind of dedicate a song to them, because I think they were rescued like the next day. I don't remember the entire story. You should check it up. You should check it out. It's pretty interesting. I think I watched it in the special features of the Foo Fighters documentary or something like that. But there's no words, nothing to it, not a full band song. It's just kind of there again. Then we have Statues, which, has a little bit of kind of purpose to it, saying like, hey, if you're not making moves, you're standing still type thing. And then, we only have so much time before it runs out. And even if you are making moves, eventually we all turn to statues, which is kind of interesting to think about. So I appreciate the lyrics here in this song. I really do. Then we have But Honestly, which I think is kind of a follow-up, a good follow-up to Statues, and in terms of trying to convey a message. Just trying to paint the picture of, having aspiration and trying to go off and do that thing and execute that thing, and, kind of people asking you that question, like, I don't know, I feel like it just kind of does a good job of giving you those feelings of aspiration like it's supposed to. I feel like a lot of Foo Fighters music makes you do that, honestly. Like, I feel like if there was a band to make you feel aspiration, I feel like it's going to be Foo Fighters. Then we have Home, which is, another kind of delicate piece with piano. Dave's a piano player now all of a sudden. And there's some sweet lyrics in there too as well. To kind of wrap it up though, just kind of give an overall, we went through every track. I think this record is good. I think it's really weird. I don't know if it's because I find, my heroes in a state of sadness, and, I don't necessarily want to reflect, or maybe I don't want to feel those things that they're feeling at that point in time, even though the way they're conveying this music, it's definitely making me feel that way. Something is off on this record, and I can't place what it is. I don't know if it's like what I said before. I feel like it's just a big conglomerate of B-sides or scraps or just ideas that they threw at the wall and they kind of stuck, and that's what we got in this record. I don't know. but it's not bad. There's legendary songs on this album. There's really good, there's really good songs on this album. I just don't think it, warrants an entire listen all the time. These are definitely ones, 3 or 4 of these could definitely belong on like a best of Foo Fighters playlist. But even in terms of like trying to stack it up against something like what we saw in One by One, right? I mean, I feel like it falls kind of in a similar category. It just feels a little off to me. There's people out there that love One by One. There's people out here that love this album. I don't know. It just doesn't hit it for me. It has nothing to do with the musicianship. The musicianship is great. The jams are there. The bouncy, dancey, what have yous. It's all there. It's all the makings of a great Foo Fighters record are here. I just feel like maybe they could have trimmed the fat a little bit. Instead of having 2 different versions of Let It Die, basically, let us have Let It Die, get rid of Come Alive. You don't need the Ballad of Beaconsfield Miners, but this isn't really in the days of like the Spotify and stuff like that. So you wouldn't have been able to really release that as like a special song at the time. So I understand why they put it there. But still, it just feels like there's a lot of fat that kind of takes up the good meat of what this record could have been. And ultimately, I feel like it takes away from the experience. I don't want to listen to, all these downers, so to speak, so close together. I mean, this is a Foo Fighters record, right? Which, I understand coming off of the last album, you could have had people who wanted the more rocky stuff and then people who wanted the more delicate stuff. That's there too. That's fine. So I understand kind of why they did it, but maybe that's why they kind of moved a little bit farther away from that, because you don't really see them doing that anymore nowadays, which now, their latest song is a completely different bag altogether. But still, I feel like we're trying to kind of come out of that idea of mixing both of those, mixing both of those things of the, like, we're going to rock out and we're going to have delicate stuff. It just doesn't work here for me all the way. But there's still good songs here. There's a couple of soft songs that I do like. And I'm not saying that I don't like delicate music. You guys know what I'm trying to say. But I don't know. I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are, because at the end of the day, this record for me is a 7 out of 10. So with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Pop Cult USA and to Raise Energy for giving me stuff to talk about. You can go to Pop Cult USA and get 30% off your entire order if you use _wannabe critic. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I am Gabriel Fast. I will always be the Wannabe Critic.